Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. After a long hiatus, we have with us Professor 𝙒𝙗𝙗 Nalapat, also known as Professor Nalapat, and he and I are going to discuss about the changing geopolitical sands and the relationships between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, the United States, and India. Every day there's a new story. There seems to be a new direction in which these countries are headed. So let's try and make some sense of where this whole relationship is going. Professor Nalapat, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel, sir.
Thank you.
So take it away, Professor Nalapat. Tell us what you think is happening, because yesterday United States had asked KSA not to cut production in OPEC, and KSA said no. And today, KSA, that is Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, or Mohammed bin Salman, because he is really the spokesperson of the country, said that, look, the United States wanted us to hold it until the midterm elections, and we didn't want to do that. And that's just a month away. So be that as it may, a lot of things are happening. Suddenly, the United States ambassador to Pakistan for the first time, in my memory at least, goes to Azad Kashmir. I shouldn't say that. My goodness, how can I say that? This Pak-occupied Kashmir, I deliberately made that mistake and said...
Chinese-occupied Kashmir now.
Yeah, it's COK now, Chinese-occupied Kashmir. So tell us, sir, how do you see this thing? Where is the axis? Is it tilting one way or the other? How do you see this whole thing?
Shri, as you are aware, for quite some time, I've been very clear on two or three things. One, we should move away from Russian weapons platforms and welcome American weapons platforms. Of course, in such a way that that a significant part of the production comes into India. And because ultimately the United States and India need a close security relationship. Given the Sino-Russian alliance, frankly, it's a no-brainer that the Russians are incrementally going to separate from India where matters of defense are concerned. As of now, most people are convinced the Russians are not going to reveal the vulnerabilities of the weapons they are supplying India to the Chinese. If they do that, then they'll be losing a very large market and other things. But whatever it is, I've been arguing for that. I've also been arguing for a very strong India-US military and security alliance to protect the Indo-Pacific from a certain authoritarian power. That's where I come from, which is why, frankly, I am a little unhappy at some of the things we are doing. For example, I'll give you an example of the way we abstained on the Xinjiang vote. The excuse given was, what happens if tomorrow there's a resolution against India and Kashmir? For God's
I know,
sake,
I just don't understand how the two are related, sir.
Frankly, Xinjiang is Xinjiang and Kashmir is Kashmir. There's a huge difference between what the Chinese are doing in Xinjiang and, frankly, what the certain Kashmiri leaders who were promoted by successive governments, including, I'm sorry to say, for many years, this government, have been doing in Kashmir. They've been doing some pretty things which I'm not at all happy about, but there's a huge difference there. And how on earth are you worried about, the spotlight coming on Kashmir if we put the spotlight on Xinjiang? It is a no-brainer. But having said that, I'd like to say that, frankly, India does occasional mistakes, and it's been explained away by people in the relevant ministry that, some elements in the ministry took a decision like this. Maybe they had no time to consult the minister or anybody else, and they jumped into a decision. Prime Minister Modi's, frankly, effort to ensure a 21st century governance system is doing well, especially in Modi 2.0, but it's still a work in progress. This may be one of the parts of that particular machine that he may need attention, give attention to. But having said that, your country, I can't understand why President Biden is doing the things that he's doing. For example, Mohammed bin Salman. OPEC is not run by Saudi Arabia. OPEC has several important members, including some members who are frankly not at all friends of the United States. And Mohammed bin Salman cannot stand in the way of an OPEC decision if the majority of people in OPEC believe that the decision is the right one. And from their point of view, cutting down production was the right decision because, okay, Russia benefits, but so do all the other OPEC members. Now, so I want to say one thing. So I don't understand. I mean, is this the CIA briefing? Is this the DIA briefing? Is this the State Department's intelligence agency briefing? Because it shows an extreme lack of knowledge of the fact that Saudi Arabia is a prominent member, no doubt, but only one of the members of OPEC. It doesn't run OPEC. Second point, a very important point. Mohammed bin Salman is the first Al Saud to challenge Wahhabism. Now, the Al Sauds were brought into power by Imperial Britain, not the Britain of Liz Truss, but the Britain of Queen Victoria. And this Imperial Britain got Al Sauds into power, and this Imperial Britain was basically the matchmaker between the Al Sauds and the Wahhabi, Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, which is an extreme form of theology. Nothing to do with the great theology of the religion of Islam. So I'd like to say that how are you going against this man who is trying to fight Wahhabism, which is a mortal danger to the whole world? And MBS is a danger to the Middle East, to Saudi Arabia, because don't forget, the Middle Eastern population is almost younger than the Indian population. After some time, oil is going to run out. Even Qatari gas is going to run out. And from that point of view, they need to go into the knowledge industry. I mean, I've said this way back, if I may say so, decades ago, that the Arabs and the Indians must come together in a technology, knowledge, and education partnership. I repeat that now, about 35 years later. But having said that, or rather about 28 years later, I'm sorry. But having said that, I'd like to say, this effort to pin the entire blame for this on Mohammed bin Salman and to basically believe, I know there are many people in France, for example. There are people in the Netherlands, for example. There are people in the UK, for example, who believe, well, if you're a former colony of ours, you should still be listening to us. Please, President Biden, as I've written in Sunday Guardian, this week, please act like an American president and not a European president, especially not a president of a Europe in the colonial era, which is what you're acting now. You are thinking that everybody must reflexively obey you and the European powers together because you're locked at the hip. Joe Biden has tied the fortunes of the United States to Europe in a way which, frankly, is damaging the security of the United States. So that's the first point. MBS is anti-Wahhabi. MBS does not control the OIC, and it's in Saudi Arabia's interest to do what OPEC wanted to do. Every single member of OPEC wanted it to do. And why only talk about Russia? Is Russia the other member? I mean, Biden, the White House is saying as though it's a bilateral deal between Vladimir Putin and Mohammed bin Salman. I mean, this is a fantasy world. I know there are fantasists in the Biden administration like Victoria Nuland. Last week, I pointed out she's the one responsible for the fact a Chinese citizen can get a visa in 3 days and an Indian citizen not even in 800 days. This is a disgrace. You're destroying the US tech industry. You're destroying people-to-people relations between the two biggest democracies. And this Victoria Nuland is the great expert of that. She's an expert in many other things that have been disastrous over the last about 25 years. I'm not going to go into that. Joe
Ukraine
Biden,
for one.
And he has made her a very prominent figure in the administration. And more horribly, the Secretary of State seems to believe that her fantasies are fact. Judging by what he's saying, judging by what Jake Sullivan is saying. And the only explanation is for them, the world is still Europe. And the world has, the rest of the world has got to march in lockstep with Europe, like they have made the United States march in lockstep with the European Union. It's not the EU marching with the US, as everybody says. It's the US marching behind the EU. But having said that, let me also point about the UAE. UAE, I think we had discussed with telephone, and you're talking about the UAE as well. You've got churches in the UAE. You've got temples in the UAE, gigantic temples. Now, for God's sake, can you build any of that in Afghanistan, which Joe Biden gave to the Taliban, the same way as Bill Clinton did in 1996? Joe Biden.
The last Gurudwara shut shop, sir, in Afghanistan.
Look, Shri, don't blame me for not understanding the problem. I pointed it out way before Joe Biden's retreat from Afghanistan, and I've been unfortunately proved right. On Ukraine also, you and I have a difference of opinion. I will be proved right. I'm very confident of that. That's a different matter. That's a different conversation. But the UAE, these are people in the Arab world who are modernizers. These are people whom the West needs to back if you're really interested in modernization. And if you're not just interested in, God knows what. So going back to a colonial era. So I don't understand this, frankly. And this is the kind of thing. Now, one more thing now. I saw that Ro Khanna, and I'm glad Ro Khanna brought forward a bill on sanctions for S-400. Although, frankly, I believed and still believe India made a mistake in going at S-400 in case the Americans had supplied us with 𝙤𝙬𝘗. I've been assured that neither Trump nor Biden has promised 𝙤𝙬𝘗 to India. They have not done that. And so I was asked, we have no option. If that is the case, if the Americans under Trump and Biden have been so neglectful of their own security that they have not offered 𝙤𝙬𝘗 to give 𝙤𝙬𝘗 to India, well, then that's a justification for S-400. I was opposed to it. But, the fact is, by Ro Khanna and one other chap, I think it's Dick Durbin or something, these two guys want to block US weapon sales to Saudi Arabia. For Biden, poor fellow, or there are, according to some people I know in Washington, there are at least 31 people who are part of his family and his friends who are completely financially very dependent on the Chinese. I don't believe Joe Biden is like that. He's a straightforward, decent man, as is his wife, Jill Biden. I can't say the same about Hunter Biden, but these two, yes. But you are gifting China and Russia the Gulf arms market. By this, you are making it clear that you're not a reliable partner, that tomorrow you can slap sanctions. That's what your sanctions have done, frankly, on Russia. I mean, it is, that's what you've done by taking away on Russian oligarchs who are not even citizens of Russia. Now, people are withdrawing their money from Switzerland. Switzerland made the big mistake of joining hands with NATO. And from that time, Switzerland and Swiss banking is doomed because Arabs, Russians, Chinese, and I'm sure that most of the Indians have withdrawn money from Switzerland long back, if not all of them. I'm very certain about that. So what we're getting from Switzerland now are the leavings, the dregs, possibly accounts that are dead or, are not being used for decades. But anyway, having said that, that's why you got Swiss banks in crisis, because money is pulling out of Switzerland. Now the Swiss have shot themselves in the foot. The Americans are shooting themselves in the foot. The British are shooting themselves in the foot. Germany shot itself on both feet. Now, Putin has said yesterday, if I remember, or was it yesterday, that you open Nord Stream 2, we'll supply all the gas you want. And that will take care of this crisis. Number one. Number two, there's a very hypocritical statements coming out of NATO. No, we don't have sanctions on Russian fertilizer. No, you have sanctions on the banks, insurance companies, and shipping of that fertilizer. So you got sanctions. Why tell a blatant lie to the world? When Stoltenberg and Biden and now Liz Truss and Scholz, lie to the world, an obvious lie. I know that people would like to buy Russian fertilizer. We need a lot of that fertilizer. It's so difficult with these sanctions on insurance companies and other things. It's so difficult to get it. So why lie to the world? The West is losing all its credibility. And may I say, I am a friend of the West. I am a supporter of the English language. Let me tell you clearly. I've been a supporter from a very long time. We need English for, frankly, the security and resilience of India. We can't do without it. I am a supporter of an alliance between India and the US to protect the Indo-Pacific. I have been the geopolitical guy who invented the story of the 21st century Anglosphere, which I call the blood of the mind. People who speak English. There are more of us in India than in the US, rather than the blood of the body, a racist concept of Winston Churchill. So for God's sake, Shri, when this group of people that I regard as natural allies of ours against China make this kind of horrible mistake, I just don't know what to say.
Well, we have to wait and see. There is probably some rationale for this, which I don't know. One thing that really troubled me was that India has 200 crores of Islamic population, Muslim population. And what better way to show your secular credentials than to vote against China on its treatment of Muslims in Xinjiang? That would have said that, yes, we will ban PFI because they were against the law, and we will also stand up for the rights of Muslims. I mean, that would have been a coup d'etat.
Let me tell you something which, again, I disagreed with you very respectfully, because I do believe you're an admirable individual. I'm glad more and more people are listening to you. I wish people in your country listen to you. I know people in my country do. On the hijab ban, I was opposed to it because I knew the PFI was setting a trap. Friends in various departments told me that. I said, yes, let's pretend we have fallen into that trap, in the sense, let's avoid that trap by saying, okay, hijab is fine. Because the next round will be, they'll try and put a burqa mandatory. The same PFI supporters will tell their wives, their daughters, and their friends, the friends of their daughters, now wear a burqa. And then you can ban it. And 99% of Muslim women would have supported you. Hijab is nothing big. You've got so many Hindu women all over the India wearing a head covering. You had people wearing a saffron scarf. Fine, wear a saffron scarf. Wear a red scarf like my shirt, like yours. Wear a brown, scarf like your coat. But we walked into the PFI trap by banning hijab. We banned something we should not have banned. And that gave fuel to this ridiculous discourse that Prime Minister Modi is anti-Muslim. I've had some small contact with Prime Minister Modi, not major contact, I must confess, very little contact, but I know the man is secular. The man is not anti-Muslim or anti-Christian or anything. He's demonized as such. And in that sense, this hijab ban, frankly, of the Karnataka government played into that narrative. This basically voting against the resolution, demanding investigation. You know what the Sino-Wahhabi lobby is talking about? They're saying, well, the reason why it was voted against, not to please China. The reason why is that India hates the Muslims and they're very happy at the persecution of Muslims in China. This is the online gossip and chatter. We fell into that trap. We could have shown the world the truth that Narendra Modi is not hostile to Muslims. He is secular. We could have stood with the West on some issues. For God's sake, it's okay. You can be a hero. You can attack the West. I have attacked the West. Then when people say, oh, this guy is a Russian agent, I attack Russia. Then when people say, oh my God, I'm an agent of some other country, I attack China. When people say, oh my God, this chap is too friendly with Iran, I attack Iran. Oh, this guy is too friendly with Taiwan. I say, you Taiwanese have made a stupid mistake. The fact is, like you, I'm an independent mind. I'm an analyst. In my university, Manipal University, I'm happy to say we have a tradition of independence of thinking. And East, West, North, South, we look at it objectively from the Indian viewpoint. So from that point of view, I'd like to say this vote was frankly a mistake. And I think somebody in the MEA realized that mistake, because which is why you had this very inadequate statement about what is happening in Xinjiang by the Arindam Bagchi. Look, it's like, frankly, exploding a bomb and then trying to divert attention by exploding a firecracker. Frankly, we goofed. Let's be honest about it. And you goofed in a way that has harmed Prime Minister Modi, just as his own party government goofed in Karnataka by giving wings to the wrong propaganda against him. This particular vote has been used to give wings to propaganda. Modi doesn't want any inquiry into Xinjiang. He knows what's happening there because he likes what's happening there, which is nonsensical rubbish. Now, why they did it? I mean, there's one problem which we discussed about 5 years ago on this channel, that there's a very heavy official overlay. People, unfortunately, you and I, officials don't like us. So, they're definitely going to put fake dossier after fake dossier against you, against me. I'm sure there are dossiers on you. I know there are fake dossiers on me. I'm sure it's there about you also. But the fact is, I am supporting this government. I support the Prime Minister. And the people who went ahead with this ridiculous abstention, rather than voting with those who wanted an investigation, were, in my view, harming the government, harming the reputation of India, and harming the leader who is running the government, Narendra Modi.
Well, perhaps viewers, you will be surprised about the way we have looked at this. I do want everyone to weigh in with your comments. We really appreciate your opinion. And but I think Professor Nalapat has made a point, and I agree with him 100% on that. And I also agree with him in the viewpoint that the United States is displaying a very confused mindset. And I think banning arms to Saudi Arabia, who is the fulcrum, which was the fulcrum country based on which this entire dollar being the currency for crude became. We have to go back and look at history, otherwise we'll be doomed to repeat it. So this is, I think it's also something that's food for thought. Professor Nalapat, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on this, sir. And viewers, as always, please like, share and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. Namaskar.
Jai Hind.
Thank you.